Christians can make claims about certainty based upon not our own private knowledge, but based upon the public revelation of God. Do you see that?
I still don't know what makes the revelations received by Moses any more public than any other revelation. How is it that any of the authors of the Old Testament received public revelation? If it was public, why did they need to write it down? Why doesn't everyone just know it?
The Apostle Paul says, "For I want you to know how great a struggle I have for you and for those at Laodicea, and for all who have not seen me face to face, that their hearts may be encouraged, being knit together in love, to reach all the riches of full assurance of understanding and the knowledge of God's mystery, which is Christ, in whom are hidden all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge."
So this public revelation is hidden in Jesus. Which is it? Is it public or is it hidden?
In whom are hidden all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge. Now again, I've said before, I tend to get mellow-headed at times and miss things, and that is something that we cannot miss. The Apostle Paul makes a claim about Jesus. He says that all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge are hidden in Jesus Christ. You want wisdom? You want knowledge? You need to find them ultimately in Jesus Christ. Now stop and think about the implications of that claim. You want wisdom and knowledge about ethics? It's only found in Jesus Christ. They're hidden in Him. You want wisdom and knowledge about art? It's only in Jesus Christ. You don't have a basis, by the way, for art without Jesus Christ. Do you know that?
What do you mean by a basis for art? Do you mean an objective standard? Why would art need an objective standard?
There's no basis for language. There's no basis for poetry without Jesus Christ. There's no basis for science without Jesus Christ. There's no basis for beauty, truth, goodness without Jesus Christ. If you want to know with certainty, you have to have Jesus Christ as the foundation.
If we can't be certain of anything without Jesus as a foundation, then how can we be certain that Jesus is a foundation? How do we take that first step? How does one who has no foundation for knowledge justify establishing Jesus as a foundation for all knowledge? How can you know that Jesus is a foundation for knowledge if you aren't already convinced that Jesus is a foundation for knowledge? On what foundation can you justify that if you don't already have a foundation? If your answer is that Jesus is the foundation for the knowledge that Jesus is the foundation of knowledge, congratulations, you've just made a circular argument.
Go to All Access and listen to Dr. Mitch Stokes, who just put his lectures up on Apologia Academy on math. And this is the point. If you don't have Jesus Christ, you do not have a consistent and coherent way to do math.
How you do math is consistent insofar as you consistently use the same rules. It's coherent as long as the application of those rules is not inconceivable. I don't disbelieve in the assertion that 2 + 2 = 5 because Jesus says it's wrong. I disbelieve in it because I have no idea what such a statement would even mean. I don't know how to conceive of it. I don't know how to believe in it. I don't know how to not believe that 2 + 2 = 4. And I'm not making an argument from ignorance here. I'm not saying that the fact that I don't know how 2 + 2 = 4 isn't true proves that it is true. I'm saying that since I can't understand what the claim that 2 + 2 isn't 4 would even mean, it is useless to me even if it is the case. It is something that I cannot believe even if it is true.
Let me give you an example. We went to the Reason rally a couple of years ago. That is where they said it was the largest gathering of atheists and secularists in the entire history of the world. They said there was like 30,000 people. It did not look like there were 30,000 people there, but we went and showed up. And we were there, and we started engaging atheists, looking around for atheists that would argue with us, and we can do this documentary we were trying to put together at the time. So we're trying to find atheists. I talked to the co-president of the Atheist Society at Cornell University, brilliant guy. In the video, he gives up science, he gives up logic, gives up ethics. And he's like, yep, gave it up.
To this guy, the failure to say that science, logic, and math are grounded in an infallible mind is the same as giving it up. But to give it up would mean to stop using it, and I doubt any atheist he's ever talked to has stopped using math, science, and logic. Now this guy might say that you were saying that these things have no ultimate reliability without a God, but even if there is a God, math, science, and logic are used by fallible human beings. As long as that is the case, there will always be a question of whether the conclusions we draw using these tools are reliable. The conclusions a scientist or mathematician draw may not be true if there is no God, but they also may not be true even if there is a God. Ultimately, these tools are not even used for finding truth as this guy conceives of it. They are used for navigating experience. We use them because doing so seems to consistently work. Sure, that may be an illusion, but as long as it seems to be a consistent illusion, what does it matter what the underlying truth is?
We talked to these young college students, and then I was noticing while I was talking to these people, I see this guy standing like watching the whole time, and he's just sort of like antsy, like he just, keeps trying to like want to step in, and I'm like, finally, I'm like, all right, come on over, like what, calm down, let's talk. And so I start talking to the guy, and it turns out he is a math professor at a college in California. And he's an atheist. He's a naturalistic materialist. He believes that all that exists is matter and motion. And he's a math teacher. So we're talking and trying to get to the gospel with the guy. And so I start challenging him on his position, his profession. And I said, well, you're a materialist. He says, yep. I said, so you teach arithmetic? He says, yes. I said, have you ever seen a law of math?
Depends on what you mean by see. I have experienced laws of math and logic. These laws are essentially laws about the limits of what we can understand. I believe in the law of non-contradiction because when I try to think of something both existing and not existing at the same time and in the same respect, I find that I can't. Or at least I don't know how to. It seems as though my material brain cannot think such a thought. The same is true of mathematical laws. Asking a materialist whether they've seen a law of math is no more of a gotcha than asking a physicist who believes in materialism if they've ever seen a law of physics. The laws of physics are consistent patterns of the behavior of matter. The laws of math and logic are consistent patterns in the behavior of the brain. Both are material.
And I wrote, ready? Follow me now. If I wrote 1 plus 1 equals 2 on the chalkboard, 1 plus 1 equals 2 on the chalkboard, okay? Now, if I pointed to this number 2 and I said, is this 2? You would say? Okay. Now, if I took my hand and I wiped off that 2, and I said, all right, 2 is gone now. You can no longer use 2 in your thinking. I've taken it away. It now doesn't exist. You said it was 2, and I took it away. No more 2.
It would be silly to say that the chalk on a board is 2, but that doesn't mean that the concept of 2 is immaterial. It is a pattern of brain activity like all concepts are.
What would you would immediately know. I said, no. You took away a representation of the universal truth of two-ness.
Two-ness is not a universal truth. The number 2, like all numbers, is an invented concept. It is not something inherent to the universe.
That's true. Do you see the point? The physical representation only represented the immaterial, universal, unchanging law of two-ness. Now that law cannot be seen, cannot be touched, cannot be weighed. There is no color to it. It is a universal, abstract, necessary, invariant, unchanging law.
No, it isn't. There was a time when the concept of the number 2, or any number, did not exist. Numbers are a means of organizing material experience. They are no more inherent to reality than the days of the week. Tuesdays are not universal truths. They were invented to organize and represent our days. And in the same way, numbers were invented to organize and represent things in general. You might say, but you can say things like the Earth was the third planet from the Sun even before humans existed, so how could it be that numbers didn't exist back then? However, you can also work out what day of the week the summer solstice in the year 7 million BC was. Does that mean that Tuesdays aren't just cultural conventions? Does it mean that Tuesdays are universal truths inherent to reality itself?
Now this unbeliever, as I'm talking to him, he's a math teacher, remember. I start challenging him on his materialism. You're an atheist, you believe you live in an unguided, unpurposed universe. It is time and chance acting on matter. It is just stuff happening, like Shakespeare says. It is sound and fury signifying nothing.
What does it matter whether it signifies anything? Matter doesn't have to signify anything to operate in an orderly fashion.
All that exists in the material, right? He says, exactly. I said, okay. Have you ever seen a law of math? Well, no. So I start getting to the bottom of it. And I start challenging him. Your worldview cannot account for universal, abstract, invariant laws.
Why not? Laws are just patterns of behavior. Why must there be a God in order for anything to behave according to an invariant pattern?
of any sort, whether they're logic, arithmetic, or say, physical laws. Your world, you can't account for it.
Why would we need to account for orderliness and consistency? This guy is another one of those apologists who assumes that the default state of reality is chaos and order can't exist on its own. Rather, guys like this believe that for order to exist, it must be imposed by some conscious entity. If that's the case, then how is it that such a conscious entity can itself be orderly? What makes your God orderly? If your God can just be orderly on its own, why can't matter?